It was a busy Monday morning, the kind that seemed to carry the weight of the entire week before it had even properly begun. The city bus was already crowded when it pulled up to the stop, its doors opening with a tired hiss as more passengers squeezed their way inside. Workers clutched their bags and glanced at their watches. Students leaned against poles, scrolling through their phones. And a few elderly passengers stood quietly, holding on to anything they could for balance. The air was warm, almost heavy, filled with overlapping sounds-ringing phones, quiet conversations, sighs of impatience, and the constant rumble of the engine beneath it all. Among the passengers sat a young girl named Emma. She looked about 12 years old, her posture relaxed as she sat by the window. Her backpack rested neatly on her lap, and a pair of earphones connected her to a world far removed from the crowded bus. She was listening to her favorite song, softly tapping her fingers to the rhythm, her attention drifting somewhere between the music and the passing streets outside. At the next stop, the bus slowed again, and the doors opened to let in a few more passengers. Among them was an elderly woman. Her hair was gray and carefully tied back, and her steps were slow but determined. One hand gripped her handbag, while the other reached out to steady herself on the metal pole as she climbed aboard. The bus jolted slightly as it resumed its movement, and she tightened her grip, her fingers trembling just enough to show her vulnerability. The bus was full. Every seat was taken. For a brief moment, it seemed as though time paused. The presence of the elderly woman was noticeable, her quiet struggle to remain balanced. The way her eyes scanned the bus, perhaps hoping someone might notice her, but no one moved. People adjusted their positions slightly, avoided eye contact, or pretended to be absorbed in their phones. It was as if an unspoken agreement had been made to look away, to stay comfortable, to let someone else take responsibility. Emma glanced up. Her eyes met the scene for just a second. She saw the elderly woman, saw the way she held onto the pole, saw the slight sway in her stance as the bus turned. But just as quickly, Emma looked back down. Her mind whispered a justification. Someone older should offer their seat. Maybe an adult. Maybe someone stronger. After all, she was just a child. The music continued to play in her ears, but something had changed. A few minutes passed. The bus picked up speed, then slowed, then jerked slightly as it hit a bump in the road. The elderly woman lost her balance for a moment, her body tilting dangerously before she caught herself. A small gasp escaped her lips. That was when Emma felt a quiet, persistent tug in her chest. Guilt. Her music no longer sounded as sweet. The lyrics blurred into noise, and the rhythm felt out of place against the scene unfolding in front of her. She tried to ignore it at first, shifting slightly in her seat, but the feeling only grew stronger. It wasn't loud or overwhelming, but it was enough to make her pause, enough to make her think. Slowly, Emma reached up and removed her earphones. The sounds of the bus rushed back in clearer now, sharper. She looked up again, this time allowing herself to truly see. The elderly woman was still standing, still holding on, her hands trembling just a little more with each movement of the bus. Emma took a breath, then she stood up. Her voice was soft, almost hesitant, but it carried a sincerity that cut through the noise. "Ma'am, please take my seat." The elderly woman turned, surprised. For a moment, she seemed unsure if the words were meant for her. But when she realized they were, her face softened into a warm, grateful smile. "Oh dear, thank you," she said gently. "You're very kind." Emma nodded, offering a small smile in return as she stepped aside and moved closer to the door, holding onto a pole for balance. Her seat, now empty, was quickly occupied by the elderly woman, who settled into it with visible relief. Something shifted in that moment. It was subtle at first, almost unnoticeable. A few passengers glanced up, their expressions changing as they processed what had just happened. One person adjusted their position to make more space. Another reached out to help someone steady their bag. A young man stood up and offered his seat to a mother holding a small child. The atmosphere inside the bus began to transform. What had once felt cold and distant now carried a quiet sense of connection. No one said much, but the actions spoke louder than words. Kindness, once absent, seemed to ripple through the space, touching one person after another. The bus driver, who had been watching through the rearview mirror, couldn't help but smile. His voice came through, light and warm. "That's what I call morning sunshine." A few passengers chuckled softly. Emma felt her cheeks warm slightly, not out of embarrassment, but from something deeper, quiet sense of fulfillment. As the bus continued its route, the mood remained different, softer, kinder. When it reached the next stop, the elderly woman gently reached out and touched Emma's hand. Her eyes were kind, filled with something that looked like both gratitude and memory. "You reminded me of my granddaughter," she said. "She used to do the same for me." Emma smiled shyly. "My mom says respect doesn't have an age." The elderly woman nodded, her expression thoughtful. "And she's absolutely right." As Emma stepped off the bus, she heard a voice call out behind her, "Hey kid, thanks for the reminder." She turned slightly to see a young man giving her a small nod of appreciation. Emma didn't say anything in return, but she smiled, a quiet understanding passing between them. That evening, Emma sat at the dinner table with her mother, recounting the events of the day. Her voice carried a mix of curiosity and reflection as she described what had happened on the bus. Her mother listened carefully, her expression softening into a proud smile. "You see, sweetheart," she said gently, "respect isn't taught, it's shown." Emma tilted her head slightly, considering those words. "Do you think people noticed?" Her mother nodded without hesitation. "Oh yes. Kindness always gets noticed even when no one says a word." Emma sat quietly for a moment, letting that idea settle in her mind. It wasn't about being praised or recognized. It was about something deeper, something that didn't need attention to exist. The next morning, Emma found herself at the bus stop once again. The air felt a little fresher, the light a little softer. When the bus arrived and she stepped on, the driver greeted her with a familiar smile. "Good morning, sunshine." Emma smiled back, her heart lifting slightly at the recognition. As she looked around the bus, she noticed something different. Before she could even think about it, a few passengers were already standing, offering their seats to those who needed them more. An elderly man was guided gently to a seat. A woman carrying heavy bags was given space without hesitation. It wasn't perfect. Not everyone changed, but something had shifted. Something had begun. Emma took a seat by the window once again, her backpack resting on her lap. She didn't put her earphones in right away. Instead, she simply watched. A small act, a simple choice, and yet it had created a quiet ripple, one that moved through people, through moments, through an ordinary morning that had become something more. Respect, she realized, wasn't about rules or obligations. It wasn't about age, status, or expectation. It was about seeing others. It was about recognizing the humanity in someone else and choosing, even in the smallest way, to honor it. As the bus moved forward, carrying its passengers into another busy day, Emma allowed herself a small smile. Sometimes, change doesn't come with loud announcements or grand gestures. Sometimes, it begins with a single seat, and sometimes that is more than enough.